today I'm going to be talking to Seyi Rhodes, a reporter with Channels 4 who is there on the ground in the UK to give us some latest information about the Woolwich attack. Now we know that two Nigerians, Michael Adebowale, 22 years old, and Michael Adebolajo, sorry, 28 years old, were involved in this attack. But a lot is also unknown. First, about where the real relationship they have with Nigeria, and if this can be called Nigerians involved in terror attacks, or just UK-based, UK-born and bred Nigerians who were radicalized in the UK and who actually carried out the attack. So, Seyi, you're welcome to SaharaTV.
Thank you. Hi.
Yeah. So, thank you. Just give us the latest about what is happening right now. What should we know about the status of these two guys who have been arrested? Have there been new arrests? Do you have any information about what's going on?
Well, at the moment, things are very cloudy. As you know, the first few days after an incident like this, the police like to keep information pretty close to themselves. What we do know is that they've searched a number of addresses, both the home of Adebowale and Adebolajo. Both of them lived in the kind of Greenwich Woolwich area, and they've also been searching the addresses of two girls who are supposed to be their girlfriends, sisters in fact, who live together. They've searched his sister's apartment, which started yesterday. So, searches are undergoing, and I'm sure that sooner or later we'll hear if there's anything interesting coming out of that. The two men themselves are supposed to be in separate hospitals, both having been shot, alive but unable to be interviewed. So, again, no information coming from that angle.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask, regarding the health situation. Are they in a position to speak? Or, do people know, does anyone know where they were shot or how they were shot? The severity of their injuries, does anybody know at this time?
Unfortunately, at this moment, the security services have them under lock and key, and nobody knows anything about their treatment. I remember after the Boston bombings hearing details of exactly where the two guys were shot, and that's not the case here in England, I'm afraid.
No, interestingly, yes, I was going to actually mention that, the British society is very close. If, for example, it took days before they would even release the names of the guys who were involved. It took days before they released even the victim of the attack and who he was. All of it was just speculative. And now it's still just more speculation. Why is the British society so close?
I'm not sure. I think it's simply a case that the police and the press have a different relationship here, and over here we kind of like to leave the police to do their jobs for a certain amount of time. So while information is being gathered, and also the police, particularly recently, there's been a lot of scandals to do with News International and the police, potential bribery cases and so on. So the police and the press don't have as close a relationship as they used to. So information doesn't come out like it used to. But still, we now know both of their names, which is slow progress, but it means that we're able to piece together some details about them. They're both Nigerians, as you indicated in your intro, that they're both Nigerians who were born in England. Yes. They were raised here. One of the things that jumped out to me and to a lot of other people watching the initial footage of this man with blood on his hands, speaking, is that he sounded like a Londoner. He sounded like he was from South London. And when he talked, for instance, about your women are witnessing this, but in our countries we've been witnessing this for centuries, or whatever it is he said. Everybody was a little bit stunned because nobody could quite figure out which one his country is. It wasn't until we found out, name, that we actually realised that he may have been referring to Nigeria. I don't think he was. Is the truth. He was radicalized in this country, and his connection with Nigeria is, from what we can gather, limited.
Yes, because that's one thing that Nigerians are talking a lot about. It's trending a lot among Nigerians, perhaps because we have this bad news fatigue, exactly. That everything that's bad, comes from Nigeria. So a lot of Nigerians are trying to distance themselves from these two guys, saying, perhaps they've never been to Nigeria before. They don't associate themselves with Nigerians. They don't see themselves as Nigerians. Obviously, the guy with blood on his hands, never mentioned Nigeria. So
he did absolutely no.
Yeah,
no, he did. And in the past, he has been at protests He's been involved with various radical groups, but many of the protests that he's gone to have been about issues in, well, all over the world, issues affecting Pakistani and Middle Eastern preachers and so on. So his concern is definitely not Nigeria primarily. His connection is not with Nigeria. He's not a Nigerian militant in any way. He's part of the diaspora, though. I suppose there are many of us who carry the name and can be identified easily as Nigerians, and we're responsible in that way. But yeah, beyond that, I don't think he has much more connection with the country.
Well, it's also emerged that he's been in Kenya and he was arrested in Kenya and tortured. And there's also another information that there was, the British security services made an attempt to recruit him to join them, and he just refused. So a lot is emerging now that's showing that perhaps this guy was just like really upset about the treatment he'd received in Kenya. And probably they just finally broke down and did this horrendous thing they did. Do you think that the British security services were involved? Were involved in the bad treatment meted out to him in Kenya?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say, but definitely, when somebody says that they're going to attend a course in Kenya in a village somewhere. You wonder what that might be. Bearing in mind the different militant groups that he's been involved with in the past, I think it's fair to assume that it was something connected with those groups. And I think it's fair to assume that when a British citizen who is actively, openly a member of these groups, his face was associated with them when he was at protests and so on, and the police regularly take photographs of people at protests so that they know exactly who's involved with which group. When he then travels to Kenya, this may be of interest, and they may decide to follow that up and find out where he's going. So I'm not surprised if he and other British citizens were at an extremist training camp of some sort, that they were tracked down. And yeah, he said the story that we've heard is actually that the Kenyan authorities raided this group, this study group, and arrested them, and that he was tortured at their hands, and when he arrived back in Britain, he was then essentially debriefed by MI5, which sounds relatively plausible. He's a British citizen. Let's not forget that he was born here, and they would have seen that first and foremost. This is not somebody who comes from abroad. This is somebody who potentially we could swing back round to our side. So it's perfectly plausible that somebody in such an open role within an extremist organization who's traveling the world and potentially meeting different people, they'd like to meet him. They'd like to find out what he knows and who he's meeting.
This is going to feed into a lot of conspiracy theories, no doubt. Do you think we're ever going to find out the real situation? Maybe this is one recruitment gone bad with the M15. Or some kind of, apart from the torture, is it possible that he was actually working for them and maybe he broke the rules and this time around they have to break his legs?
There'll be a lot of conspiracies going around. There already are about Boston. There are conspiracy theories about everything. We call them conspiracy theories for a reason, though, because we know that they sound implausible. One thing I will say is that the two men are both one is from Kidbrooke, an area in southeast London, not far from Woolwich, which has had a history of gang problems, of interracial problems. There has been not very good, particularly good mixing of different races in that area. You may have heard of Stephen Lawrence, who was killed quite famously in England, a black man killed by a group of white men. His trial was covered up by the police. That all happened in that area, in the Kidbrooke area. Adebolajo himself is supposed to be a member of a gang in Woolwich called the Woolwich Boys, or associated with them. It's not necessarily a gang, but a large group of boys who hang out together and occasionally engage in criminal activity. He'd been involved and had witnessed a stabbing and a murder before, and had been a witness in court to that. So both boys were from an area which is troubled. There's a large Nigerian population in the area. There's also a large Somali population. In fact, when I first saw that video of the two men there, I thought maybe one of them might be Somali. I couldn't quite place didn't look like the kind of faces that I'd normally see. So yeah, it was very hard to place them, and it's not surprising that they turn out to be Nigerian, because actually there is a very large Nigerian population there. So these boys grew up in an area where there was trouble, and I think we've known for a long time that various extremist organisations recruit in these kinds of areas, looking for these kinds of boys who are active, who have no cause to hold on to, but who are out looking to make a name for themselves, who are willing to take risks, and can easily be bent into doing what people want. So I think that for me makes me discount most of the conspiracy theories. These are English young men. I know exactly where they come from. I come from just down the road, and I can see how lost and looking for something to cling on to, they drifted into the wrong kind of groups.
Yeah, and another question is, should we look at more trouble from, this kind of population in the area, in the UK? Obviously, huge Nigerian population, children who've never been to Nigeria before, they're lost in the maze they have identity crisis. They live in the most oppressive part and the racist part of the UK society. Pretty much, bless you. Pretty much, most of these guys have nothing to live for, and then they're looking for an outlet. Is this a major problem within that society? Is this going to lead to more trouble, more problem? Because apart from Nigerians, like you said, there are Somalis, there are Indians.
Yes.
Just a lot of people who find themselves on the fringe of society, and it doesn't look like the society is addressing this issue well enough.
We've already had the 7/7 bombings, which were carried out by a group who were mainly of Pakistani origin, but again were born in this country, brought up in this country, played cricket and got involved in all the same activities that I would have done as a young boy when I had Pakistani Muslim friends. So that was quite surprising for us. One among that group, though, who didn't get a lot of mention was actually he was mixed race, part black, but he wasn't African. He was actually West Indian origin. And again, a very similar case. Drifted into the wrong kinds of circles. Used Islam as something to hold on to, and then from there was kind of driven into kind of an extremist form of the religion. And it was already a kind of an omen back then. So it's not surprising to me that more young men like him are coming up. Whether or not there'll be more Nigerians, I don't know. There are a lot of Nigerians active within British Islam. There are a lot of Nigerians here, so it's quite possible. But as you say, there are also a lot of Somalis and a lot of other boys and a lot of other groups. So we'll see what happens. But the reaction to this so far suggests that everybody's worried. Everyone is.
Yes. So do you see this as something that will ultimately hurt Nigerians in the UK, or this is just going to be as usual? It will hurt everybody who's on the fringe.
I think Nigerians are tough people.
Yeah.
I always, if it comes down to the end of the world and there's 10 people left, there'll be at least 2 Nigerians in the group. So I don't think.
I think all the 10 will be Nigerians.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think this is going to hurt us as a group too much.
Wow. See, I want to thank you so much for coming on our show today, and we'll be back in touch with you. And just one final question is, what do you think will happen to Islam or the mosque? People who are peacefully practicing their religion. Do you think the reaction that will come from British citizens, also the fringe elements on the right, white supremacist groups, will even push more people into becoming more radicalized if they're not careful about? What do you think about that?
Well, this kind of incident on our streets definitely has provoked a big reaction. That's probably the thing that people are most scared of right now is counter-attacks. There have been some relatively minor attacks on mosques so far, but a definite increase in attacks on Muslims overall in the last few days. So that's something to keep an eye on. On the whole, I believe we started this conversation, British people are pretty reserved, so I think the reaction will be limited compared to how it could have been in many other countries.
Wow. Thank you so much, Seyi, for coming on our show on Sahara TV, live out of New York City, talking about the Woolwich terrorist attacks. So our viewers, it's been Seyi Rhodes on Sahara TV talking about the attack on the British soldier by two British Nigerians, as they're well known now. And so that's all the facts we can get you, and we'll continue to provide more facts as they become available to us. Please do not go away. There's more coming on our show today.